Representatives of Colombia's FARC guerrillas say a bilateral ceasefire is now more urgently needed than ever. They made their remarks at the peace talks in Havana after 37 guerrillas were killed by the Colombian armed forces in the departments of Cauca and Antioquia. Telesur's Natalia Margarita now joins us live on the line from Bogota. Natalia, after last Friday's airstrike that killed some 30 guerrillas in Cauca, there was another attack over the weekend. What can you tell us about that latest attack?
Hi, Cody. Yes, in fact, over the course of the last weekend, another airstrike by the Colombian army took place in the state of Antioquia, specifically in the Segovia municipality, where 10 guerrillas members more have been killed by airstrikes, as I said, carried out by the army. But what's the most concerning thing out of this is that at least 352 residents from this troubled state of Cauca have been forcibly displaced from their homes as a result of this new escalation of the conflict following this airstrike that left 26 FARC guerrillas dead Friday last week. We're talking about here 352 people that have been displaced over the course of just 3 days. Mainly Afro-descendant residents of Cauca, confirmed by the local ombudsman. These people have been coming from the rural areas of San Agustin, Las Juntas, Balsitas, moving to the urban area of Huapi, where this attack of Friday took place. They are trying to seek refuge from the combats that have been intensifying since Friday last week. The ombudsman has called on the local authorities and on the national government to please assist the humanitarian situation that is taking place right now as a result of this latest displacement. So the escalation of the conflict really seems to be worsening here, again, in the rural area, not just of Cauca, but also in Antioquia, as I said, where the latest airstrike of the government that left 10 guerrillas that took place. At the same time, so all in all, the situation really is not looking good, particularly to the rural residents of Colombia, who at the end of the day are the ones that are really suffering the most out of this escalation of the conflict. At the same time, it is important to highlight that different social organizations, peace advocates, have been insisting and calling on both sides involved, the FARC and the government, to please de-escalate again the conflict, and especially on the government to finally agree on a bilateral ceasefire as the very, very only way to prevent further victims and further displacements in these rural areas of Colombia.
And the government has so far, Natalia, refused to enter into a bilateral ceasefire. The FARC had previously been under a unilateral ceasefire, but they've now since called that off. What are FARC leaders saying at this point? Do they continue calling for that bilateral ceasefire as they've been doing for a while now?
Yeah, they have been calling on a bilateral since December last year when they implement this unilateral ceasefire. They have been calling on the government to agree on a bilateral ceasefire. And it's important to say that it's not just something that the FARC have been demanding from the government, but mainly social movements here in Colombia, as they say that, of course, even the unilateral ceasefire was effectively implemented since December last year. If there is a constant and permanent offensive by the army, then it will never be possible to maintain this unilateral ceasefire, as unfortunately it happens.
And do we have any
Tell me?
I'm sorry, Natalia. I was asking if we have any indication so far how this might affect the peace process as it continues in Havana, Cuba.
Well, definitely the negotiations in Havana, they are still going. You know, right now we're in the 37 round of negotiations, and they have always said, both sides involved, meaning the FARC and the Colombian government, that what happens here in the ground in terms of combat or military actions won't affect the negotiations in Havana. But still, that's right what the people here is saying, that while the peace process keeps underway and keeps advancing in Havana, it is important to take into account that the people here in the rural areas are suffering from military actions. So that's why they are insisting on agreeing on a bilateral ceasefire and not wait until a final deal is reached in Havana as a result of the ongoing negotiations in Havana.
All right, Natalia, thanks for your reporting as you continue to cover the escalation of attacks and violence there in Colombia.